Hello and good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Julie Vandekamp, the Chief Customer Officer here at SONAR, joined today with Scott Pecorello, founder and CEO of WeatherOptics. We're going to dig in a little bit today into what to expect this hurricane season compared to last, and then give a live demo of our integration where our customers have the opportunity via the SONAR platform and our critical events page to view your own specific locations and set up alerts to understand how critical events like weather can affect your supply chain specifically. So again, Scott, thank you for being here today.
Yeah,
and we're going to go over a little bit of a weather forecast.
Thank you for
teach us about the weather this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. We're going to get a little bit weather nerdy, I think, to start things off. But before we dive into the 2025 hurricane season outlook and what to expect, we're going to start with a little recap of 2024 because it was so active. So I'm going to show my screen here. I have some information on the last year's hurricane season and also what we can expect for this year. So obviously last year was a super hyperactive year. We considered it hyperactive because there were 18 named storms. 5 of them were major hurricanes. Obviously last year featured the hurricanes of Helene, Milton, Beryl, if you remember earlier in the year, that hit Texas. So there was an unusual amount of not only hurricanes, but landfalling hurricanes as well that had a huge impact on the US coastline and on freight and supply chain in general. It was the third costliest hurricane season on record, about $130 billion in damage. Most of that was due to Helene and also Milton, both hurricanes that struck Florida. And we've been seeing this kind of pattern the last really decade of very active hurricane seasons. 8 of the last 9 years have featured what we consider above average hurricane seasons. And so the question is, will that continue for this year? But before that, somehow the freight was also impacted from last year's major hurricanes overall.
Yeah, I wanted to just take a quick minute to, I guess, join the ideas of how weather really does affect the economy and the economy of freight specifically. So this graphic shows last year how tender rejections specifically were impacted by the major storms. You can see all the way to the left that winter weather did impact and increase both the NTI as well as rejections, so the OTRI. And then as you go forward into the year and you get more into hurricane season in October and November, you can see on the screen as well where rejections both increased around both Helene and Milton. I think that one of the things that I find the most interesting and impactful, obviously no one wants there to be damage from a hurricane. We're not looking for that. But when you talk about the most costly hurricanes, last year being a costly year, huge impact of that, I think, comes out of flooding specifically. And then also, there's no doubt that when that happens, there is a freight effect on the rebuilding. So there certainly is a temporary and immediate freight effect on rejections increasing in those markets. And on the next slide, we'll get into how those rejections proceed and talk about spot rates, right? So out of those locations, you can see in the graphic as well that coming out of those storm spot rates out of those locations increased as well. Very, very typical of any event where first tender rejections increased and then spot rates tend to catch up and increase very quickly after that. Later, there is a rebound effect out of these markets, right? That there will be some lack of freight coming out for a little while, and then as rebuilding does begin, freight comes in. So with the costliest impacts and weather events, it does tend to move the freight market. The more damage that is done and the more populous the area, obviously the larger impact. And then in many cases, from a demand standpoint, a positive thing for the freight market, depending on which side of the equation you're on. But generally, they do end up, again, the more damage done, the more populous the area where they do make landfall, the more impact it has to freight and creating more demand for supply.
Absolutely. And last year was a reminder that it's not just the coastline that's impacted, right? Because we saw crazy effects into interior North Carolina from Helene. And so beyond just the immediate coastline that's always at risk, these impacts do go well inland as well. So 2024 was obviously super hyperactive. The question is, will 2025 be as hyperactive, and what can we really expect? Right now, we're anticipating what we consider to be a slightly above normal hurricane season. So not quite as hyperactive as last year, where we saw 18 named storms and a lot of major hurricanes, but slightly above normal. We have forecasts from both the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which is NOAA, and we also have forecasts from Colorado State University, which has a great hurricane program. They are top-notch, top-tier at predicting hurricanes and the impact that a given season will have. So the average that we typically see, looking at 1990 to 2020, about 14 named storms every year, 7 hurricanes, 3 major hurricanes. NOAA's predicting a little bit higher than that, between 13 and 19 named storms in total. 6 to 10 of them are expected to become hurricanes. 3 to 5 would be major hurricanes. Colorado State University is pretty similar, about 16 total named storms, 8 hurricanes, 3 major hurricanes. So again, slightly above normal, but all it takes is one event, right? Even if you had a year with relatively low activity, all you need is one landfalling hurricane to really have a high impact, not only on supply chain logistics, but on lives and property and everything that comes along with the hurricane. Couple reasons for 2025 not being as active as 2024. We're going to get a little bit weather nerdy here, but the core reasons are really ocean temperatures are going to be warm, but certainly cooler than 2024. Last year, we saw extreme temperatures throughout almost the entire Atlantic basin. Warm temperatures over the ocean or in the ocean really fuel these hurricanes. So this year, we're seeing warmer temperatures, but not quite as extreme as we saw last year. Wind shear is also a factor. So that's wind in the upper level parts of the atmosphere. That has a huge impact on hurricane development and formation. This year, we're noticing higher wind shear, particularly in areas that we see a lot of this hurricane development happen. And again, all it takes is one major event. So even though we're not expecting it to be as hyperactive, I think that's been sort of the norm as these above average seasons. We still anticipate a slightly above average season with a couple of major hurricanes as well. So let's start with the ocean temperatures. This map is showing basically ocean temperature anomalies, right? How unusually warm or cool is the Atlantic basin currently? Lots of red on the map, you can see. Across a lot of the core of the Atlantic basin, we're having these slightly above normal temperatures for ocean. And so that will help as storms develop. It will help fuel those systems. But if we zoom in a little bit more, we go to our main development region. This is the area that is in the eastern Atlantic basin. And you'll notice that there's a lot more of those blues there, which indicate cooler ocean temperatures. So hurricanes or disturbances will come off the coast of Africa. They'll get over the Atlantic basin. That's where they like to begin developing. That's where we see a lot of our major hurricanes develop. The fact that the ocean temperatures are slightly cooler over that part of the Atlantic basin right now is aiding in this sort of slower start to the season. I mean, the season started June 1, and now we're into August. We don't see the peak of the season until mid-September, and it goes well into October. But a lot of the reasons we haven't seen much activity yet is because we have these cooler ocean temperatures over our main development region. Again, we think that as the season goes on, this is going to change. We'll see probably some warmer ocean temperatures, especially as development happens closer to the US, where ocean temperatures are already warmer to begin with.
Makes sense.
Wind shear. What is wind shear? It's probably a term that is not heard very often outside of the meteorology community, but it is these upper level winds in the atmosphere, right? So there's different layers to the atmosphere where different types of weather happens. And at the very upper level, the top level, there are certain wind speeds and wind directions that affect what happens at the surface. So you can almost think of hurricanes as like, a cake or a cupcake, and they have like icing on top when they get really, really strong, right? You need the full cake in order to have a strong hurricane. What wind shear does is basically wipe the icing off the top of the cake. It almost goes against, once the hurricane starts rising and growing, because it's this convective system, the wind shear wipes the top of that hurricane off. And so it makes it really hard for storms to form, or once they form, it makes it hard for them to really strengthen. So all of this red that you're seeing in this animation, this is the last 7 days of wind shear. So it looks super complicated and confusing, but basically the more red that you're seeing on there, the more wind shear that we have across the Atlantic basin. So there's a lot of red, right? As storms kind of pulse and develop, they're running into this wind shear, so it's making it much harder for them to develop right now. Now, as we head into the peak of hurricane season, we think that this will relax a bit, particularly towards that main development region. When wind shear relaxes, it makes it a lot easier for these thunderstorms to start developing and these hurricanes to start forming. So as we get into the main part of hurricane season, we do expect this to change. But right now, that's why it's been so slow so far. I believe we've only had 3 named storms. None of them have really impacted land. We'll see. We'll have to watch as we head later into August and into September. Again, the peak of hurricane season is September 10th, so we're still a little bit more than a month away from that. We expect this wind shear to relax a bit.
You noted on here that the most important areas to watch will be the Caribbean and then MDR, which is the
Yes.
main
Development region. Yes.
Is there any way to predict or have an idea of what parts of the country may be most affected by this, right? Obviously, we're talking about the eastern part of the country, things coming off of the Atlantic. Is there any way to pinpoint it more than that, or to have any ideas where the most activity may be?
It's a great question. We certainly try to do that, and wind shear is a good indication as well as ocean temperature. So the fact that the warmer temperatures are so close to the coastline indicates that later in the season, when systems develop closer to the southern half of the U.S., they're going to have a much better chance of impacting places like the Southeast and the Gulf Coast. That's what we really look for in late September, October, as temperatures further north, let's say above South Carolina, North Carolina, start to cool down. The areas really close to the coastline are where we're going to be watching. So I think there's more indication that we call them homegrown systems because they happen closer to the U.S. There's more indication that that is going to be a problem, especially later in the season. The fact that that main development region has those cooler ocean temperatures lowers the risk maybe slightly for parts of like the northern half of the East Coast.
Okay.
But still, all it takes again is one event to happen. The main development region kind of fuels those long tracked systems that we see that go all across the Atlantic basin. So yeah, it's a great question. It's something that we try to pinpoint, but difficult to do up until a couple weeks ahead of those events actually happening.
I honestly expected you to just say, no, we don't know.
Well, there you go.
We can't necessarily know the tracks until they get closer, but yeah, that was great. So
it's hard.
you.
It's even once they form, it's difficult to predict exactly what the tracks are going to be. But really within like a 5 to 7 day window, it's gotten much better, particularly from NOAA and the National Weather Service. They've done an incredible job of increasing the accuracy of predicting those actual hurricane tracks. So each year we're getting better and better at predicting, where those hurricanes are going to go once they form. And as I talked about a bit last week, the introduction of AI weather modeling is exploding in the industry and also helping to better predict those things. So even though we're expecting, a less active season than, let's say, last year, there's still an above normal risk of major hurricanes making landfall at the U.S. So even though I've spent time here talking about how, hey, we're not going to have this hyperactive, like 18 storm type of season, most likely, that still does not minimize the risk for actual landfalling hurricanes, because even with 10, 12, 15 storms, there's still a higher than normal likelihood of actual landfall happening. So if you look at the entire U.S. coastline, we're looking at a 48% probability of a Category 3 or higher hurricane making landfall at some point this season. The historical average, going back all the way to 1880, is about 43%. So again, slightly above normal for just a general risk. And again, this is for major hurricanes, not just any event. These are major events like a Milton or like a Helene, maybe not to that degree, since those were at the very upper end of all hurricanes, but still, we're talking about major hurricanes here. If we break it down into a couple of different regions within the U.S. coastline, talking about the East Coast, the Gulf Coast, the Caribbean region, again, we're seeing those slightly elevated probabilities. Not one in particular really sticks out over another, slightly elevated for the entire U.S. East Coast from the Florida Peninsula all the way up into parts of New England. Gulf Coast as well, about a 31% risk. And the Caribbean region is going to always have the highest risk because once storms form in that Caribbean region, they don't have a lot of places to go. They're sort of trapped within the Gulf of Mexico or within the Caribbean. So over a 50% chance of that happening. So as always, folks should be very aware as we head into the peak of hurricane season that these are really realistic probabilities of things happening. And so all of the Gulf Coast states and the East Coast line should remain vigilant of potential development as we head later into the season. I believe that concludes the nice slideshow presentation portion of things. So I will switch over here
So,
to our live demo.
yeah, as you're switching over to the live demo, I'm going to talk a little bit about the partnership and what it means for our customers, WeatherOptics customers and SONAR customers. So through our enhanced partnership, obviously if you're a SONAR customer currently, you can see critical events in the SONAR UI and track things like major storms. With our enhanced partnership, we have been able to take that a bit further and allow our customers to share their specific locations with us. It's super easy. It's a quick upload file. We really only need your locations. We can add the lat long for you, or you can provide it for us. And then we work with WeatherOptics so that you can visualize on the map where your facilities are, whether you are a shipper and you want to track your manufacturing facilities or your warehouses or distribution centers, or if you are a carrier and want to track your drop yards as well as your terminals, you can do that. Or if brokers have specific parts of the country they want to set alerts for and put specific locations in where they might have equipment that they do power only, I don't want to say stockpiled. I don't know. When I was in trucking myself, we definitely would hide and stockpile trailers occasionally. But it allows you to do that on a very granular level. Yes. We call it hyper local weather, right? So you can see exactly where your location is. You can do things like set up alerts, and then obviously visualize where the tracks of incoming weather, where they could be going, and how it could affect your network. And when I think about this and why it would have been important to me, in addition to watching the national weather and thinking about those things, when I had to worry about safety, I really would have enjoyed having this as a tool that I could have used to help me make decisions on when we should shut down, which routes we should shut down and when. Should we be routing around things or keeping drivers out of that region as a whole? Should we be pushing appointments up or back? When I was responsible for trucking, or if I was a broker, where are our major shippers located, and are they in the path of that, and is it going to affect the tenders that I'm getting this week or next week, or my ability to deliver into those locations? Do I need to reset appointments proactively? I can think of a million cause and effect things that this would allow you to prepare for and do more proactively than waiting to see what might happen with a storm and then scrambling on the back end. I think, we had someone in-house who gave us a lot of weather updates regularly when these were happening. Had I had this tool, I wouldn't have been waiting on emails to help me make those decisions. I would have been able to look at this and do that in real time and say, okay, pull all of our trailers as close to the building as possible, park them as close together as possible so that wind won't be as much of an effect, make sure they're in the highest area of our yard. And then the same thing if you have, as a shipper, if you have some of your product in trailers or staged on the yard, or even storage trailers, being able to proactively prepare for major weather events. We're focusing on hurricanes today, but this encompasses so much more than that, and other critical events that can happen, including other storms, flooding, wildfires. Yep. The list goes on and on. Obviously, based on this time of year, we wanted to focus on hurricanes, and they tend to have the largest freight impact as well because, again, highly populated areas, larger areas, more damage done with hurricanes than many other events. But super important, in my opinion, to be able to plan proactively for these sorts of events that you otherwise cannot plan for, right? Unforeseen. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're touching on something really important, which is the focus on impact, right? Not just this raw hyperlocal weather data, but like, how is it going to affect my operations? And I think that's what we at WeatherOptics are really focused on, is creating these insights that allow you to answer some of those key questions that you kind of just posed, as opposed to just giving you hey, the rainfall is going to be this much, or the wind speed's going to be this much. It's like, what do I actually need to do to my operations to make sure that I am prepared ahead of time for these events? And I think that's what's so valuable about the partnership that we have established here, is that not only is WeatherOptics doing that, but now we're doing that within SONAR, and we can use that customized data, almost like creating a supply chain digital twin, right? Like just recreating your operations, overlaying those critical weather insights on top of that, so then you know what to do when it comes time for a major hurricane or a blizzard or any other kind of weather event.
Yeah, and I think visualizing it really helps, because you can think about, okay, do we have emergency supplies that we need to stage near that, depending on if you're a shipper, what you ship, right? If you're a grocer or retailer and you have water that you need to stage near the location, what's the best warehouse or DC for you to be doing that at? Or if you happen to also ship generators or batteries or all of the other things that people need in a storm, should I be staging that in my Macon facility to have it as close once we can access the location again, or should I be staging it in my Charlotte facility or wherever it is, and you can visually see that pretty quickly and easily. And if you need to reroute before the storm as well, right, to ensure that you aren't sending critical freight or supplies into an area that could be impacted as well if they aren't there for emergency support.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also mentioned, things about automation as well, right? Like that's a big part of, I think, what this shared product is able to do is that you don't necessarily need to be, generating manual emails or checking for, all of this weather information. We're able to automate these sort of notifications and alerts. So if you do have a key hub or distribution center or lane or any kind of critical location that's important to you, you can layer in these kind of alerts so that you can be proactively notified. Creating executive level briefings that are automated is also part of what we do together. So there's a lot, I think, to dive into here, and I'll get into a demo of the platform as it currently exists, and also the customization that we now have with the new part of our partnership. So this is the critical events portion of the SONAR platform. It's powered by WeatherOptics. I'm showing you the WeatherOptics view of this right now, just so that you can get an overall idea of how the system works and what kind of data is supplied here. So up top, super easy for me to see what routes, what locations, what's currently being impacted either today, tomorrow, or over the next 3 to 7 days. So it's a really nice breakdown of what do I need to be aware of, right when you log on to the platform and see what's going on. I then have a nice table that shows all of my operational impacts. So any of my locations in the current SONAR platform, it'll be locations that exist that are major distribution hubs, logistics hubs. But with this new partnership, you can put in your own locations super easily, sync it up to your own specific operation. So there's just some examples in here of locations that we've put in just to see how weather is impacting those locations. So it's a nice overview of, you can put in any locations that you want in here. You see the overall impact level. So, stoplight kind of metrics of low, medium, high, peak impact times. And then really important is the impact type, right? So not only, hey, there's a hurricane approaching or there's rain, heavy rainfall that could lead to flooding that's approaching, but what specific operation is going to be impacted? That's a huge part of what we do here at WeatherOptics. So we break it down by impact type. We have a road conditions index, we have a disruption index, life and property index, we have a flood index, all of these different what we call impact indices. 0 to 10 scores that account for weather and critical non-weather factors. So the example that I always like to give is, an inch of snow in Chicago versus Dallas, right? Same amount of snowfall, 2 totally different impacts in 2 totally different markets. Dallas, we could see, the entire city shut down from an inch of snow. Chicago, it's another day during the winter, right? So what's crucial about these scores that we have that are now available to SONAR users is that they break down those types of differences to account for not just weather, but how is weather going to impact my operations in my specific market that I'm working in. So there's a couple of examples that we have in here. A couple of these I think are located in Louisiana, putting in just some warehouse locations. You can see we have, for today, a road risk. It's a 7 out of 10, which is quite high. We have pretty moderate disruption, some life and property issues, some flooding as well. I can also expand here on the timeline, and it'll show me a nice, basically, timeline of when these disruptions are going to happen. And I can look today, tomorrow, 3 to 7 days from now. So if I go back to tomorrow, it really breaks it down nice and easily, right? I can see exactly, okay, when are my road conditions going to be impacted the most, all right? Through, the early part of Wednesday. By Wednesday morning, it looks like road conditions clear. How about flooding? When is flooding going to happen? What about power outages? Am I going to be susceptible to other issues, life and property damage? So this type of timeline view, again, makes it really easy for you to see what operations are going to be impacted at what times specifically. And again, all of your own locations can be uploaded into here so you can see what's going on. And then we also have the reason codes, right? So like what is causing the road disruption or the flooding or the life and property damage? As you can see here, heavy rain, sometimes it'll say hurricane or blizzard or other types of weather events. So we update you with all of that information as well.
And this information is live, so how often is it updating?
This is, you can see it's a little bit outdated here, but this updates every 15 minutes. So our weather models are constantly readjusting and updating. and you can get that refreshed pretty much at that cadence. If you want it to be at a lower cadence, we also have some customization there. So if you want it to be updated every hour or 4 times a day, that's all possible within the platform.
So the other thing that I noticed and that I like about it, obviously, if you have all of your facilities and you have all of these impacts, I would be stressed out to see all of it. You can also click on only high impact, right?
Yes.
To narrow that down a little bit and ensure that you're just getting alerted from the ones with the most potential impact, right? If there were any going on, today, or if there were major flooding, or if there, almost always hurricanes are a high impact, right?
Yes.
So they would show under that. But to me, occasionally that takes out some of the noise that makes it a little bit less overwhelming and certainly less stressful for me. Like, okay, these are the ones I need to know about.
Yes.
These are the ones that I should be concerned about and really watching.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's an easy kind of feature on here where, instead of seeing all of your operations and seeing the different colors and things that we have when I, uncheck it, because there is a lot going on. There's a lot of moderate impact. But if you just wanted to narrow it down to the highest impact, super easy to do in the platform right here by just selecting that option.
Yeah, I like the ability to see all of it, but you can also really drill into just the highest impact.
Absolutely. And then there's the map view as well, right? So a lot of people are visual. I'm certainly kind of like a visual learner. I like seeing, even if it is a bit overwhelming, just seeing my general operations. So a great view, again, kind of that stoplight, green, orange, yellow, red, to see what operations are being impacted. So I can see across the country what's going on. And I'll notice that, it changes by day of the week, right? So if I look at that 3 to 7 day time period, I can also see what operations are being specifically impacted. I can then turn on the various layers that we have within the platform. So if I wanted to look at, just the NWS alerts and see what's going on, really easy for me to see that here. We got radar, so any of, as a storm is approaching, live information, which is super crucial. I mean, when a hurricane is coming on shore, this is going to be up-to-the-minute information about how that hurricane is progressing, what impacts are happening with those every 15-minute updates. We have great traffic data in here as well. So as roads close, as there are incidents, as there are other issues that are happening, not strictly just weather, but a lot of non-weather data in here as well that you can play around with. Lightning, if that is important to your operations, if you have outdoor workers and you're worried about safety of your workers, all this is really good information to have. Now, I think the most critical thing, and it's the name of the product as well in both regards, but our critical events that actually show you where those storms are happening. So not only do we get really granular with, hey, there's a road impact or there's a life and property impact, but 30,000-foot overview, what storms exist in the area, whether they're hurricanes or anything else, right? So this gives me the ability to see at a global scale what storms exist throughout either the US or throughout the world, broken down into a couple of different categories. So I can see nice and easy here, severe thunderstorms in part of the northern plains today. Looks like we have some heavy downpours, or sorry, this is 3 to 7 days out, so I'll switch to today here. We have a flooding event in parts of the southeast today, so I can see exactly which one of my key locations or assets are a part of that, and what actually is expected is like this automated AI briefing in the flooding itself that I can see when it starts, when it ends. So really easy for me to see those kind of storm systems that exist. And then, of course, on the topic of today's webinar, all of the cyclones. So any area that is expected to see hurricane development is noted on here. Any active storms are noted on here. And if they overlap or are expected to impact any of your operations, you will also be able to see that directly in the platform, set up those automated alerts for that as well. So you can see a disturbance off the coast of Mexico in the Pacific. I get a great description of what is expected, the chances of formation. And then I also see my spaghetti plots, which people love to look at because it shows all the different possibilities of where that storm is headed. So not only the track, but the strength of that event as well. So again, as hurricane season gets underway, having this sort of visibility into all the different possibilities and where are your assets and what you need to do is obviously super, super important.
As I was thinking about this a bit more in the use cases, and obviously as a shipper or someone who has physical goods that are stored places or operations in different parts of the country, very easy to understand the use case of that. But as a transportation provider, we really were looked to as eyes on the ground by a lot of our customers and shippers to provide weather briefings and tell them what's happening. At what point will we be shutting down operations? Will we be still sending trucks in? What are our drivers seeing? Having this level of a summary that we could use, that we could screenshot, that we could share with them. Particularly with the executive summaries that you were talking about a bit, would have been incredibly valuable and useful to me to continue to be a collaborative partner for them as well. So you touched on it a bit before, and I know that you talked about AI last week as well.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about what's happening at WeatherOptics and how we're getting into that and what you guys are doing with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So all of those risk scores that I talked about earlier, the flood index, the road index, all of those are modeled based off of artificial intelligence. So what we do really uniquely here is that we look at historical events and how they've impacted operations in the past, right? So we look at 15 years worth of data. We see where there have been incidents related to freight, related to damage, related to flooding, and we train models to recognize when those conditions are going to happen again, both weather and non-weather data. So I talked about, all of the kind of weather modeling that goes into it, but also looking at things like slope of roadway, tree height and density, population density, distance from river, all of these different factors, again, all go into this model so that we can recognize when there's going to be a higher risk to a certain area. And we've seen that work really impressively well for a lot of these major events, beating existing entities and forecasts by using this type of AI modeling. The flooding event that happened in Texas last month and the one also in North Carolina last month are great examples where we were able to produce alerts before national entities and other private weather companies because we had this level of AI modeling that was involved in creating our forecast. So it's a super important part of what we do and why companies use us, right? It's why supply chain logistics and trucking companies are using WeatherOptics is because we take it to that next sort of step, not just giving you the raw weather, but like, how is this going to impact safety? Do I need to alert drivers? Do I need to change routes? Do I need to, move goods to different warehouses and locations? So all of that is what our insights are kind of tuned to do. And obviously the critical events and having these storm layers are a big part of that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, and obviously no one wants to deal with these situations, but the more prepared you can feel and the more proactive you can be is really all you can do, right? That's the best you can do to try to ensure the safety of your teams, of your goods.
Yes.
And then understand, using the rest of the SONAR data to try to then understand the freight impact, right? What is it going to have an impact on capacity availability? Is it going to have an impact on rates going forward? Is it going to shift the dynamics of tender rejections in the market? So I think it's such a natural partnership that makes so much sense to really paint that full picture of the impact to the supply chain.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just showing here just some of the risk scores as a visual as well, right? So not only just getting those, the insights that we produce on like a, quantitative level, but also seeing those visuals of where power outages are likely to happen and where different events are likely to happen. So all of these sort of map layers are available to SONAR users, and again, overlaid with all of their critical locations and assets. So these are just the different indices that we offer here. I also want to show a different view that's a little bit cleaner. Going to our map tab here, gives me a little bit more of kind of a map space. And so again, if I go to my events here, it's really easy to see all of the different types of events that you could turn on. I mean, everything from earthquakes to hurricanes, live power outages. There's just a ton of data and information that can be pulled from the WeatherOptics platform. I'm obviously showing all of this at once, so it's a little bit overwhelming, but we really cover everything that could be considered a threat to supply chain operations. So critical events within SONAR is really, that one-stop shop for all of this type of information. Even things like storm damage reports, right? Like as weather comes, not only thinking about being predictive and proactive planning, but then looking back and seeing where was wind damage that occurred, where did tornadoes occur? So all of that is available through this partnership and through all of these different layers that I'm showing here.
Yeah, super valuable insights, in my opinion.
Let's see if I can show a better view of the briefing. Here we go. So here you can see very clearly like all of your assets that are at risk. Makes it super easy for you to then go over and click on Charlotte, for example, and get this nice timeline view. So there's different ways to visualize the data as well. Again, this sort of customization, this next level of our partnership will allow customers to get this kind of data as well.
I love it. Yeah, I definitely love the briefing aspect of it as well. To me,
Yeah.
that makes it more actionable, gives you a really clear message you can also then share about what's important, what's happening, and what others need to know about.
Absolutely. Trying to think if there's anything that I'm missing from the demo here, but I think we've covered a lot of what I wanted to go over. Earthquakes and fires. I'm thinking just because last week there was that major earthquake and just off the coast of Russia, which was super relevant. And so all of that sort of data is in here as well, and also all of the wildfire data. So you can see, look off the coast right now, just the number of earthquakes that have occurred because of that event. And you can click on them to see all the kind of information that you want. So
Very cool.
Not only just strictly weather, but other related impacts as
I
well.
was with my incredibly smart nephews last week in Florida, and they were watching this, the impact of this, and watching, the earthquake, and if they thought there would be tsunami or any impact. And I was like, I honestly don't know, but I could have logged in here and at least
could have logged in.
They would have been so impressed with me.
Exactly. Now you know for next time. Well, hopefully there's not another major event like that, but yeah, one-stop shop for that kind of information.
I think this is really a lot of incredibly good information. Thank you all for joining us today. If you'd like to get more information about this and how you can either gain access to critical events or get your specific information into our critical events platform, feel free to go to gosonar.com. You can request a demo. If you're a current customer, reach out to your account manager. They can give you any of the information as well. As we enter into hurricane season, between now and September 10th, the peak of hurricane season, we will be offering a promo where if you do sign up for the hyper local weather with your specific events with Sonar and WeatherOptics, you will get the first month free for your year-long contract with that. So feel free to take advantage of that and reach out again to your account manager or via gosonar.com to request more information on that.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for coming and talking through it and giving us a weather lesson, and excited to continue to offer such a cool product to our
Absolutely.
customers.